the madness and the lies, as they're holding back the truth. No matter what they try, I will always fight for you. I will save your innocence they are trying to remove. I am here at your defense, and I will always fight for you. Yes, I will always fight for you. I will stand here in the way, and I will not give up on you. I will shield you from the pain. In the battle on the field, there is evil on the move, but I hope that you can feel that I will always fight for you. In the darkness of the times, there's a light that shines the proof. It'll soon reveal the crime, so I won't stop this fight for you. Yes, I will always fight for you. I will brave every attack, and I will not give up on you. I will always have your back. So to every single mother, father, stand up for your sons and daughters. Do not back down, don't let up. You are all they have for armor, so make this a war to win. Look in their eyes and tell them that I will always fight for you. I will stand guard at the gate, and I will not give up on you. I will stop each shot they take. Yes, I will always fight for you. I will always fight for you.
The first duty of government is to protect our rights.
It's our job to maintain the proper role of government in what we were tasked to do.
In the Idaho Constitution, Article 1, Section 1, we have a right to life, we have a right to defend life.
This legislation is centered on meeting the needs of Idaho families.
And we have no way to maintain control over the spending of this program, and it will be a disaster for this state long term.
But we have a whole gamut of kids whose parents would like to do something for them and they cannot.
The courts have long held that our ability to transfer title on real property benefits society as a whole.
This is simply about putting it out of reach of young, innocent, vulnerable children and making our libraries and schools a safe place for them to go.
And I am increasingly frustrated that we cannot stop ourselves from drinking at the public trough.
He's sounding the alarm. He's saying if we don't address these issues, we potentially might have greater problems moving forward.
I feel like we're back to an unappointed board that gets to decide who is essential and who is non-essential.
If I was looking at a business and I was looking at these figures, there would be heads rolling because this is unsustainable.
We're supposed to be bottom-up government. We're supposed to be representing my citizens' ideas and your citizens' ideas, and we're supposed to be discussing them and debating them to come to a conclusion.
And for me, it's about a couple things. It's about food security, it's about national security, and it's about preserving American exceptionalism.
The First Amendment and our freedom of religion, freedom of speech are our first liberties. They are so important. We don't have the rest without them.
Okay, we are live here. It is January 5th, 2024. Idaho Signal is broadcasting, and we have a banger of a show for you today. We have Representative Heather Scott coming up, Senator Scott Herndon, and writer Brian Allman to discuss. He's going to be on a little bit later to discuss the state of the Idaho press, the corporate press here in Idaho, and why we're doing this show. It's been a long haul to try and get to this point, but we've got a good team assembled here, and the feedback that I've gotten from folks I've discussed talking about Idaho Signal. It's going to be a great thing. I'm really excited to get this thing going. So, without further ado, what we're going to do here is we're going to start by bringing on Representative Heather Scott. And Heather Scott has been in the state house for 5 terms. This is 10 years that we've had the pleasure of having Heather Scott being a rabble-rouser in the house, but working for the people. And as we saw in the montage coming into this, Heather, every time you stand up, you speak directly for the people. And that is why I thought it was so important to have you on as one of as the first guest on Idaho Signal. You are also co-chair of the Idaho Freedom Caucus, which just went through its first term, I guess, in existence last session, and now you're going into this session, and you've kind of got a better lay of the land about how the caucus is being treated and the effectiveness of the caucus. So first, welcome to the program, and why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about the caucus as well.
Well, thank you. And first, what a wonderful intro. If that doesn't get you fired up for session, I don't know what will. It's super exciting to see all those people standing up for the citizens. And each year we grow that. And as you mentioned, the Freedom Caucus, we've always kind of been operating behind the scenes, but last year we went official and we organized, and we've got structure, we've got a staff member, and we're connected to other states where we have been networking with Washington, seeing what's coming out of there. We've been networking with the other Liberty folks in other states, and it has helped us tremendously. So what a great intro, and what a great venue that we have been missing for the last 10 years I've been there. No one has actually been down there reporting every day what's going on in Boise, and most people live so far away. So this is very exciting to me. So thank you for doing this and putting this together. And what an honor to be your first guest.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And one of the things that I have noticed, because I'd like to throw some shout outs to folks across our great state, is that the level of citizen engagement in journalism and reporting on what's been going on has really percolated the last year, especially this year, and with venues like X, Twitter, with Elon Musk taking over Twitter and changing it to X and allowing for that debate, that open debate to happen. It's been really special to kind of see that, and I see that you're pretty active on X as well, which is great. So let's get into it. I want to make sure that the people understand what the Freedom Caucus is behind, how we can support you guys, and what's on the agenda.
So we are super excited. We're organized this year. We have a rec card coming out with the issues that we are pursuing this year. Obviously, one of the first ones, we've got 4 main areas that we are committed to as a caucus. And so constitutional rights, individual rights. We're not talking corporate rights. We're talking individual rights. We've seen so many attacks on our gun rights, our due process across the country. So that is one of our main focuses this year. One of our next ones is fiscal responsibility and transparency. We are really digging into the spending. Our taxes are way too high in Idaho. For so many people moving here to pick up the tab, we are paying way too much. So we are working to decrease taxes and our federal dependency. I don't know that a lot of people understand, but when that federal money goes, Idaho's in a whole lot of trouble. And so that is one of our focuses. Our last 2 topics are, protecting the innocence of children and families. We are working as we see the moral decline in this country and this state, there are just so many battlefields when it comes to protecting families and children. The porn in the libraries has been a really big issue. I don't understand why that's so hard to stop. Our children are being sexualized. We are for responsible education. And so we're working on ways to promote teachers that actually want to educate students instead of indoctrinate. And those are some of our big hot topics that we're planning to pursue. Of course, you're going to see, you know, the ESG stuff, protection there. Some of our other stuff will be digital currency we're going to be addressing this year. But those are our main categories that we plan to pursue this year.
I'm very concerned about this federal dependency thing, because I've taken a look at the numbers when we look at the budget that we've set aside for education, for Medicaid, and for various other programs that the state uses federal money for, which generally comes along with some sort of strings attached, if you will. I mean, our national debt hit 34 trillion. It just hit 33 trillion a few months ago, and now we're at 34. And I don't know what 2024 has in store for us, but if the federal government ends up in a huge pickle where the states are going to be defaulting on things, I mean, where do we end up?
You know, you're going to see this year a lot of changes in the House Finance Committee. Ways to come up with alternative budgets when that federal money does stop. Ways to a new thing that we passed a bill last year. Freedom Caucus members passed a bill last year to get all the memorandums of understanding and agreements on to the state controller's site. So if you go to that site, you will see the agreements we have with all across the country, federal agreements. We are really focusing down on some of those agreements. And that's the only way we're going to have to start weaning ourselves from that money. It's unnecessary in a state like Idaho. So we could be a self-sufficient, sovereign state if we would put our mind to it. But there has to be a will. And, you know, I'll mention this, Matt. A lot of our Freedom Caucus members, they're terrified of them. They're already being attacked in the upcoming elections. But the big thing is everything's getting spun. Everything is being spun different directions. And the when we hit fiscal conservative and we start exposing how the spending, that's when we got doubled down on. That's when they really came after our members. And we're just trying to expose how they're spending money. And every time we try to expose it, we are being tagged with, oh, you're against police officers, you're against teachers, you're pro-drugs. They just make up all these lies about anyone that wants to stand up and bring accountability to the spending.
Right. We just have a few seconds left here.
Yeah.
Please, how can people stay in touch with you? How can they get your newsletter? How can they follow you? Where's the best place?
Texting me and calling me is really the best way. I know that sounds crazy, but I get so many emails. And Twitter, connect on Twitter and say, I want to be on your newsletter, and I'll get you on there somehow. But I'm going to be putting a lot of stuff out on Twitter. I'm going to do a lot more social media, and it'll be a busy session. I'm looking forward to it. And this program is going to be, stay in tune with this program, because Signal's going to be down there live, and you're going to hear really what's going on behind the scenes. So I would stay involved with you guys.
Well, thanks for that shout out. I
Yes.
appreciate that. All right, Heather, good luck down there. Have a great weekend, and we'll connect with you again soon.
All right. Thank you. And good luck to your program.
Thanks. All right, everybody, we'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
There's a saying in Idaho, Esto Perpetua. It is forever. But the truth is, nothing lasts forever. Not without a fight. The Gem State is ours to fight for. It is ours to win. For life, and liberty, for honesty and integrity. We ride together.
All right, thanks for sticking around here. It is my pleasure to bring up, we have Senator Scott Herndon, District 1. That's up in Bonner and Boundary County. Let's bring him up here if he's available. Hopefully he is. Senator went through a Supreme Court case. There he is. Went through a Supreme Court case on the Second Amendment. And because they lost that case, thankfully he's a senator, so he could do something directly about it and write some legislation to help right that wrong. So, Senator, first, welcome to the program, and I'd like to give us a little bit of background on the case, that Supreme Court case, and then what leads you to your new piece of legislation for this year.
Okay, you bet, Matt. Thanks for having me on the program. So the case started up in Sandpoint, which is near where I am. That's my local town, local city. And there is a public park called War Memorial Field owned by the city of Sandpoint. And every summer they have a special event there called the Festival at Sandpoint, which is actually very enjoyable, great for the community. Basically, there's a football field, bleachers, and a stadium, and the city issues a permit for a private organization to use the field. And they have bands come in. It's basically 2 weeks, and for 3 nights of the week or 4 nights of the week for these 2 weeks, they have concerts in the evenings. And so they charge money to get into the concert series. And in 2019, they started wanding people at the gate. So as you would come in with your ticket, they have their own security. Again, private organization using a public park of the city of Sandpoint. And they're wanding people and screening for firearms. So basically, this concert series has been going on for decades, and then they suddenly started enforcing a firearm ban. So we decided to test the legality of that ban, because generally speaking in Idaho code, we have what are called firearm preemption laws, which say that cities and counties and other local governments cannot regulate the carry of firearms. We're a true constitutional carry state. There's very few places that you cannot go with your firearm. And the preemption law basically says that the Idaho state legislature controls the laws over where you can and cannot carry, and no local government can override the state legislature and their control of the laws. So it was our opinion that being a public park owned by a municipality, a city, we did not want to allow them through a special event to prohibit carry of a firearm in this public park. That was our position. That's what we sued over. So we challenged this arrangement between this private organization called the Festival at Sandpoint and the city of Sandpoint, which is obviously a municipal corporation, a local government. We challenged the arrangement where they have this event, and allowing the private organization to control the park, they allowed the private organization to prohibit firearms. And we took that all the way to the Supreme Court of the state of Idaho. And the Supreme Court of the state of Idaho, I think they fairly interpret Idaho law. I don't think they do much in the way of judicial activism. I think they're attempting to fairly even in the preemption section of our code, basically says that private property is private property. And the way the Supreme Court interpreted that is, even though the underlying ground is owned by the city, the Festival at Sandpoint, the private organization, is technically leasing that ground, even if it's just for a few days. And when they lease that ground, it takes on the characteristics of private property. And of course, we always allow people on their private property to dictate their own terms, and that is right. And so the Supreme Court's opinion is that statute is clear as it is, that the minute they lease it, even if it's a super short-term lease, even if the lessor doesn't get total control of the property, that for that event, it is private property. And so what we want to do is come up with a solution legislatively to address that scenario, because what it did is opened up a Pandora's box of possibilities. And it's really that Pandora's box, especially, that we want to address. So, and I'll give you an example. In the city of Sandpoint, the farmers market also uses a private park, downtown Sandpoint, Farm Park. They don't charge people to enter. It looks like it's public property. People can walk through it. And we don't want a farmers market, which is a private organization, to suddenly say, hey, for the duration of our farmers market, at the boundaries of the farmers market, you cannot carry your firearm. And so there's a whole list of possibilities. Boise, they hold their farmers market on downtown city street on a sidewalk. And all of a sudden you could say, hey, this block of this city, this organization that's private, because they're technically leasing this public ground, we're going to allow them to, at the moment, under that Supreme Court interpretation, theoretically, they could say no firearms. So they could have a guy at the front, a sign at the front, and screen people for firearm carry.
Hey,
and
Scott,
we don't want that
real
to
quick,
happen. So we're going to try to thread the needle here and find a way to solve that problem while respecting private property rights, true private property rights. And that's the challenge this session. So that's what we're going to try to get done.
Yeah, well, that's great. One other fallout to that is would this apply to?
Unfortunately, I cannot hear you.
Oh, am I being heard over the airwaves here?
Yeah, I cannot hear you, Matt.
Okay.
I went away somehow.
Okay, let's see if we can get. Let's see if we can get that fixed. We can chat. Maybe we can chat with him on the side here. Hey, this is our maiden voyage. It's okay. We're gonna encounter problems here. So let's just go me full screen here, and we'll try and get that problem fixed with Scott here. Well, you heard it, folks. I mean, this is a huge problem when it comes to our Second Amendment rights. But I think we're all good. We can get Scott back. You can hear me now, Scott? No, he can't. Okay. The good thing is that he's working on legislation to help protect your Second Amendment rights out there, because there isn't a reason why you're out on a public street and you have to disarm yourself if you're walking through a farmer's market. I mean, it just doesn't sound reasonable to me. And if they can violate this fundamental right that's in our Bill of Rights, what stops them from them saying, well, we could limit your free speech, your First Amendment rights. You know, you can't wear that hat when you come through our farmers market, or you cannot distribute literature outside or through it. Whatever the case may be, when you're out in the public, you should be allowed under normal city ordinances to exercise your rights. And so the ramifications of this are deeply disturbing, and hopefully Scott's got some really good I can't imagine he doesn't, that Senator Hernan doesn't have some good legislation to address this. So
I can hear you now. All of a sudden
great,
you came
great,
back
great,
again.
Scott. Yeah. So that was my question: was the ramifications for the rest of the constitutional law? I mean, this is kind of a canary in the coal mine kind of situation.
Well, interestingly enough, if we look at the rest of the Constitution, the First Amendment is a great example. There is a great case out of Portland, Oregon, in the Ninth Circuit. So this is in federal court, where a group used part of a private park. It's called Gathright versus Portland, to have a wedding. And then they prohibited, there was a guy who came in and he was actually a gospel preacher. So he was handing out tracts and wanted to pass out information because it's a public park, but they're having this private event. And they prohibited him, and the police came and threatened him with the trespass citation. And he sued, and the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal said, no, that's his First Amendment right. That's a quintessential public forum, and that forum never loses its nature. So in constitutional law, apparently there's no question when it comes to the First Amendment, but then it's a totally different law when it comes to the Second Amendment. These two amendments, number one and number two, are treated totally differently by the courts.
Right.
And that is very interesting and amazing to me.
Yeah. No, you're right, and it shouldn't. They should be treated the same. I mean, this is the rule of law. It's the rule of law for our land, and it's survived 250 years or so far. So we got to keep it going. Scott, we've run out of time here. I want people to know I want the best way for people to follow you and to find you on social media.
Okay, so you'll find me on Twitter or X at Herndon4Idaho. And I will be very active there during the session. I'll be doing a lot of live video and video clips, and I'm daily posting. And you can sign up for my newsletter by going to my website, Herndon4Idaho.com. That's Herndon, F-O-R, Idaho.com. Right on that homepage, there's a sign-up link. So you'll just scroll down just below that pretty picture of my family and click sign up for my newsletter, and you're going to get my email updates directly.
Fantastic. Thank you, Scott. I wish you the best down there, and we'll see you soon.
Sounds great, Matt. Thanks.
All right. Take care. All right, folks. Brian Allman is up next, so stick around. We'll be right back.
All Idaho lawmakers swear an oath to support the Idaho and U.S. constitutions. But how's that working out for you? Because not all Idaho lawmakers share the same values. That's where the Citizens Alliance of Idaho pledge comes in. 10 statements inspired by those two founding documents that are designed to preserve our shared values. Values such as education freedom, safeguarding free speech, defending our protected right to self-defense, and being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars. When a lawmaker signs the pledge, they are performing an act of political courage, accepting the challenge to be a champion for our values, and serving with political integrity. To find out if your lawmaker signed the pledge, visit idahopledge.com. Paid for by Citizens Alliance of Idaho. We ride together.
All right. Boy, this is fun. Our maiden voyage I think is going really well. We hit a bump here, but that was it so far. So hopefully I'm not jinxing us, because I want to bring on Brian Allman here, the fantastic writer, podcaster, if you will, and just all around good guy, good family guy. Brian, welcome to the program. I really want to hear from you, your perspective, just kind of like a 20,000 foot view of what the press is like here in Idaho, the corporate press, and then let's talk about how you specifically are working to kind of combat some of the narrative that's out there, and ways that everybody can kind of stay connected and involved and pay attention to both sides of the story, if you will. But give us an overview of what you see is going on in our Idaho press.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on here on your maiden voyage. It's quite an honor, and I'm looking forward to seeing, speaking of press and getting the message out, I'm looking forward to seeing how Idaho Signal is going to do that, bypass the mainstream press and bring people information about what's actually happening as it happens. And of course, I'm trying to do the same thing. I've started to interact with the mainstream press, and it's not all bad. Some of the outlets, they're very clearly slanted in one way. If the, say Idaho Statesman or Capital Sun is going to talk about an issue, they're clearly going to be coming at it from the left. Although I have to give the Statesman credit, they did publish a few of my letters to the editor recently. In other cases, it really depends on what they're talking about. If you're reading Boise Dev and they're talking about some land use thing, you're probably going to have accurate information, I assume. The Idaho Press recently did an article about the possibility of an Ohio-like abortion referendum coming to Idaho, and the reporter reached out to me and fairly represented my comments. So, there's two ways of looking at it. Do you want to try and starve the mainstream press, keep them, not interact with them at all because they're biased, or do you want to engage with them and, one way or another, get your message out? And actually, before I talked to that reporter, I had a conversation with Senator Herndon just to get, his advice on how to make sure that your message is clearly stated, because he is tremendously good at that. But at the same time, I think it is very important that we be building our parallel institutions. It goes in all areas of society. We need to be building parallel conservative institutions. But most importantly, with journalism and press and information, because control of information really is control of people. And if the only thing you're seeing about, say, the legislative session or Idaho political news is coming from the big corporate outlets, then you're really missing a lot of context. And they're pushing their agenda, and they want to frame the story in such a way that you believe a certain thing and take certain actions and vote a certain way. So so I think it's important that all of us are getting out there. So you just brought up Substack. It's a great platform. The whole purpose of Substack is just to give you the ability to write stories, write posts, have them delivered to people's inboxes. People can subscribe for free. People can subscribe, for a few dollars a month to get extra stuff. And over the last few months, I've really made an effort to get out there and post something every day, because there is no lack of things to talk about. And sometimes it's just things I find interesting, like when Wyatt Earp was a Kootenai County deputy sheriff. But other times it's things that people are really, curious about, such as who's funding these attack ads against the Canyon County conservative senators, who, the PAC that's funding them, where are they getting their money? Find the breadcrumb trails that go all the way up to the top, things like that. And some of those things I haven't seen in mainstream news. They'll tell you what somebody working for IFF said in a tweet 5 years ago, but they're not going to tell you that Governor Little's soliciting donations that are eventually being used to tar Tammy Nichols and Brian Lenny and Chris Trakel as California liberals.
Right. Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. A lot of the times it's what the press isn't reporting on that is is the big problem, because what we're aiming to do here is to highlight stories that we think the people are interested in and that they should be interested in, because as a press outlet, you're a curator of information, and there's only so much stuff that you can do. But when independent outlets like yours come out, it tends to trigger a lot of folks, because that specific story that you mentioned about Governor Little's PAC seemingly collecting money for one reason and then turning it around and washing the money here and there and so forth for other reasons, whether all that is true or not, it's at least something worth investigating. And I think that's the point. It's always the people that are asking the questions that get in trouble. And so I look forward to seeing you asking a lot of questions. I want to get into, the next time I have you on, I really want to get into some more of the specific stories that you've been covering and asking you what the feedback you've been getting through your website and stuff. So we've got about a minute left here. Any closing thoughts before we ask you to make sure we get your contact info and how to reach you and how to follow you?
Well, like I said, I appreciate the opportunity to be on here. I'm really excited for this and so many other outlets coming out. If you go to a website, I didn't set this up, someone else did. It's called Idaho.one, Idaho.one. In your web browser, and that will bring you to, it's basically a not a curated, but an aggregated list of a bunch of different right of center media outlets here in Idaho, and it'll just post whatever they're posting. It's got the Substacks from Senator Zeiderfeld. It's got whatever IFF publishes, Idaho Freedom Caucus, Idaho Tribune, Stop Idaho Rhinos, Kootenai Journal, and of course my publication as well. So you can see a lot of different ones there, and they're adding more all the time as these different things pop up. And I'm excited to see this parallel media environment grow.
Yeah, Idaho One. I'm aware of this. I'm excited about it because it does act kind of like almost like a Drudge Report on steroids with the aggregating of different outlets on the conservative side. So we're really happy to see that. All right, Brian, where's the best place to read your stuff? Where do people need to go?
Well, you can go directly to gemstate.substack.com, but just this week I've launched a new platform. It's called Gemstate Chronicle, gemstatechronicle.com. It's going to have everything from Substack and more. This evening I'll be live blogging from the Idaho GOP winter meeting, and I'll be bringing you updates from the session once it starts. So, I will be on the ground right alongside you, sharing as much information as I can get.
Fantastic. Thank you, Brian. We'll look forward to having you back.
Thank you.
All right, folks, this is a special half-hour edition today. We'll be back on Monday with a full hour, and this is a daily program, so we're going to try and do a full hour every day, 11:30 Mountain, 10:30 Pacific. And if you are excited about what we're doing here and you want to support us, please head over to idahosignal.com to find out how you can support us. And any contributions, any way to keep us afloat would be great. The program is powered by Citizens Alliance of Idaho, which is a 501c4 that is a legislator accountability project. You've been seeing the ads for the last half hour pop up about what we're doing here. So that's it. Thank you for riding with us on this maiden voyage. We're working out the kinks. I'm shaking off the nerves, and we'll be back on Monday for another go at it. We'll see you next time. Thanks again.
This bill, I think, it puts a stake in the ground that says we have a sovereign right to protect what's ours.